I'm News 1130's Peter Wagner reporting from my house in Ferndale, Washington. We've been learning an awful lot of terms, not only here in Washington State, in Canada as well. Things like social distancing and flattening the curve. Now we're starting to see what some of the impacts of those social programs might end up being on the COVID-19 pandemic. Researchers at the University of Washington were looking into the question of what the long-range impacts would be if we're on the trajectory that we are on right now. Let's focus on nationwide for a moment. So they're saying in the U.S. that by the time we get to July, the United States could see as many as 81,000 COVID-19 related deaths. In Washington State, that number could be around 1,400 people. And they're saying that all of that is the case even if extreme social distancing measures are kept in place for the time being. Now, what they're talking about with the Evergreen State is that we are not projecting a shortage of hospital beds here, but of course, that's not really the case all over the country. So all of this certainly going to be used by Governor Jay Inslee in deciding whether or not to extend these stay home, stay healthy orders and the social distancing orders. Of course, people are not allowed to gather in groups of any size here in Washington State, and that is in place for at least the next week or so. But the governor has talked about the idea of possibly extending that if we need to increase social distancing measures to try and continue to flatten that curve. Now, let's turn to a little bit about education in Washington State. 2 weeks, kids have been out of school. What is going to happen? Well, the state superintendent of public instruction has said that on Monday, students and parents should expect to hear from their schools. Schools and individual districts have a chance to plan how they're going to deal with education. Is it going to be all online? Are there going to be packages that schools end up sending? So a lot of the decisions now being made at that local district level about how they're going to educate thousands of Washington kids who now are at home. Well, since so many of us are at home, now many of us also have the chance to stand on our patios and our porches and cheer for frontline healthcare workers. That's now in Seattle. What started in Italy has become a hit in places like Vancouver, is now happening in Seattle with the sounds of cowbells and people cheering. In Seattle, it's about 8 o'clock, so they can celebrate those frontline healthcare workers. For City News in Ferndale, Washington, I'm News 1130's Peter Wagner.